cows. Apparently Harold had two. And he'd drive Nora back home. So they got married sometime in the late 1940s. I haven't found an exact date. Here we have Nora on the 1949 voters list. But we don't know that that information wasn't 3 years old. Because I think from everything I've heard, she and Harold had already married at that date. They weren't married for very many years though, because Harold died in 1952. And Nora continued to occupy the home that her grandfather had built on St. George Street. So this is her with her loom, and she had it set up out in the sun porch in the good weather and taken upstairs when it was cold. And she made gifts for lots of people, myself included. And she's knitting. Her obituary describes how the flags flew at half-mast on the Tyendinaga Mohawk territory to mark the passing of Nora Home Rafta, honorary member of the Bay of Quinte Mohawks. She had taught for over 40 years at the Quinte Mohawk School and was awarded the highest honor given by the Mohawks in recognition of her service. Pallbearers at her funeral were Chief Donald R. Brandt, William J. Brandt, Mayor Glenn Belcour, Robert Finlan, Eugene Marlowe, and Lester Brandt, her former students and her neighbors.
What year did she pass away?
1996.
Earl Hill was there, and he's at that funeral, and he was the chief. You mentioned Earl Hill. I didn't hear it, maybe.
Well,
I was at the funeral, so I saw him.
I'm sure you were. What I have is what Verna gave me as a photocopy of her obituary from the paper, and it said Chief Donald Brandt.
I nursed her.
Oh,
at
Donald
the
Brandt
hospital.
wasn't around.
Okay.
I nursed her.
Yeah.
What if I see the little lady she was?
Well, and she was very elderly because
Yeah.
think about this. I mean, she's born 1903, so in 1996 she's 93 years old, and she's been living alone most of her life. Very particular.
I don't think she threw anything out. She was lovely. She was lovely.
Well, there were a lot of people very upset when relatives appeared and pitched things.
Oh,
So that was unfortunate, because they didn't appreciate that there were local people who would have very much liked to have had them.
I might say that the girl I went to school with, Edith Green, was at the funeral, and before Nora passed away, she got a lot of information from Nora. She had been a student of Nora's.
So this is one of the Arvin radios, and I know this isn't the side you typically look at first, but I found the information was interesting, the model number and so on. And my husband remembers repairing one of these for Nora. So here's a 1947 business directory. This comes from a Hastings map. So these are businesses in town, but not necessarily all of them, because these are the ones that paid to be advertised, right? So in the 1950s, the production manager of the Arvin radio plant was a Charlie Gray, and Jim Graham was the superintendent. So as the radio business wound up, the plant became Ideal Vendors, making soft drink machines. After Ideal Vendors, there was a company making carpet tiles. One thought for a potential business was to make snowmobiles, long before they became popular. Charlie Gray tried them out on the front fields of the Finland farm. But with nobody else on a snowmobile, it didn't seem like any fun. The trucking firm was owned by Don Reed, Adam's grandfather, who became the father-in-law of Brian Finland, George's nephew. Don Dawson owned the marina where they used to pull out the Miss Kingston and repaired Farley Mowat's boat, the one in the boat that wouldn't float. And maybe if it was still in existence, the ferry to Wolf Island would be in Desiranto instead of in Hamilton. Thomas Jackson had the hardware store, and Thomas McCullough was the druggist. All are named on the 1953 voters list for Deseronto Hastings South. What had been Bogart's Grocery was now Walker's General Store, and Ed Roach's butcher shop across the street. Burkett's Groceteria was across from the post office on Main Street. So here's a picture of the grade 8 class, 1952-53. And there are some people in here that can be identified. There's Jackie Berry, my sister-in-law's younger brother. And on the back of it, the names. Yep. Yeah, there's all the names. I'll see that Amanda has a copy of the picture. Hudson's Mill, ground grain and mixed in minerals for cattle feed. Here's the Lucky Strike bowling alley. Now, I've been told, Adam, that it's this woman here is probably your grandmother,
Laura?
Flora.
No doubt at all.
Where was the bowling alley? Here.
Right here. I get this urge to go bowling every time I come in.
And the other side was the laundromat.
Ernie Luck went to look that.
I
Yeah,
live in
yeah,
Ernie
both.
Luck's old house.
Pardon?
I live in Ernie Luck's old house.
Oh, do you?
Own the bowling alley.
Before you were married?
Okay. Canada Optical, about 1970. So after the old Kronk or Greenpoint ferry was replaced by the bridge, Reg Dawson set about converting the old ferry into what he called a home boat. It wasn't a houseboat, it was a home boat. And I had the privilege of being on that boat while he was finishing it up. It was pretty spectacular. Yeah. Reg's wife was Vera McKnight, a cousin of Hugh Finglas. And Vera's still very much alive, and she celebrated her 100th birthday in April. So she's at the Riverine. And she can still step dance. This for a group in Kingston. So I took a bunch of pictures of Deseronto together. Thomas Street. St. George Street, north of Highway 2. Up by the old Rathbun House and Bob and Verna Fingland's house. Across the street from here, where we are now. That used to be the bowling alley and the laundromat. Your town hall, post office. I like your murals. There's the marina with the haul-out facilities. Mill and Water Street, that was where the hub of business activity was in days gone by. There's where the foremost salvage yard was. Apparently they had fantastic welding equipment there, could fix anything. This is where Metcalf's canning factory was, followed by Arctic Gardens. Dawson's Ford showroom was in this building. And the garage was around the corner and up a block where the town garage is now. Deseronto Yacht Club. Looking across to Forester's Island.
Do you know when that all burnt over in the island, all those big, huge buildings?
I don't know. Do you, Don?
Plus, I didn't hear the question.
What year did the buildings on Forester's Island burn?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know that they all went at the same time either. And here we have your new town playground. I have it on good authority that Reg Dawson's great-grandson gives it 2 thumbs up. So, what were my sources? The Deseronto Archives.
The book Lost Horizons, The Story of the Rathbun Company and the Bay of Quinte Railway by Donald M. Wilson, published by Mika Publishing Company, Belleville in 1983. The Ontario Birth, Marriage, and Death Registrations
And census and immigration documents from Ancestry.ca. I know everybody sees the ads on TV for Ancestry. Clicking on the leaf will not instantly build your family tree, but it is an incredibly convenient way to get images of all those documents. Passenger lists and census documents from Find My Past. They're particularly good for Ireland and the UK. They do have some for Canada and the US, but their specialty is the UK. The British India Office Ecclesiastical Returns from FamilySearch.org. FamilySearch is free. They do have an incredible amount of material, and it's global. So these were from the one I was referring to was the birth information for Walter's wife, where she was born in India. The McGill Honor Roll and the War Book of Upper Canada College came from internetarchive.org. And when it comes to books that are not in copyright anymore, it is an incredible resource. You know, instead of going to an old bookstore or whatever, you can go on there, you can download it as a PDF and read it all you want. Tremendous resource. The Canadian Expeditionary Force Attestation Papers from Library and Archives Canada. And they are indexed, and they are gradually not just putting up the attestation papers, they're putting up the military records. They're doing it gradually, so, you know, not everybody's people are up there yet. But
They're up to G now.
Yeah.
So the first,
they're working through.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting to read the whole file instead of just the attestation papers. Where someone had an uncle or a great uncle who had been a real troublemaker. And he was in trouble all the time. He was forever trying to figure out how to get himself sent home. And he had a file yay thick. I mean, it was hilarious, you know, because you're reading it from far enough away that it doesn't matter, right? The Oswego Palladium and Daily Times, the New York Post, and the Buffalo Courier Express newspapers are all from FultonHistory.com. And it's mind-boggling what they've got up. And it's free. And the Toronto Star Archives, which aren't really free, but they were briefly. And it's amazing how many times Desiderata showed up in the Toronto Daily Star. So I will leave this information with you. And
Thanks so much.
does anybody have any questions?
It was wonderful.
Does anybody have a question or two?
Percy Floyd had a business here. What was his business? Do you know?
I don't know.
Who was that?
Percy
Floyd,
It was called.
Percy Floyd.
Don?
Well, they had a distributors up here,
a distributorship.
a distributors of,
What?
What were they distributing?
well, I don't know much about that.
Yeah, it was a Quinny distributing company.
Oh, I remember that, yeah, yeah.
Yes, and they used to sell things to like stores.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember that
Like,
myself.
little
They weren't too
small
far from here,
items,
actually.
No, they
stores.
weren't too far from here.
That's
It
right.
would be
They,
Green Street or somewhere.
it was
over
just
there.
around over here somewhere, yeah.
Yeah.
It started out over at the
Yeah.
building that isn't there anymore.
Oh, I remember that
Right next to the O'Connor house.
The old store there.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Was that a hotel, that building?
It
It
was.
was here
One
when
time.
I
Yep.
moved here, it's 28 years ago.